In the year 2000, the Montpelier Foundation was created and set on a mission to tell the story of James Madison and his plantation home, Montpelier. But we were starting from a house and a landscape that had been significantly changed over the over 150 years since the Madisons sold the property. Piece by piece, archaeologists, historians, architectural historians, historic preservationists, and curators began to uncover the layers of the past and put back together the home and furnishings of Montpelier's main house. But the main house is only part of the story. Montpelier was a plantation, one that stretched over thousands of acres, filled with fields, workshops, barns, and homes of the enslaved people who were held in bondage and the free whites who oversaw their labor. The center of life for these people was not the main house, but rather the home farm. The home farm is the closest farm within the plantation to the main house. Today, Montpelier's home farm looks like a big open field, but through intense research and collaboration, Montpelier is looking to restore the home farm just as we did the main house. Our first step is to gather information about what we might find. To do this, we do historical research and archaeological survey. From this preliminary work, we have identified several sites and buildings within the home farm. These include a large barn used for processing tobacco and wheat, a blacksmith shop, quarters where enslaved people who worked in the fields lived, and an overseer's home complex. The purpose of a plantation is to produce crops that can be sold for profit. At Montpelier, like other plantations throughout the Mid-Atlantic, tobacco was the primary crop. In 2012, archaeologists discovered a log structure with trenches full of charred wood running along its interior walls. In the surrounding area, there were also metal teeth from an unidentified machine and domestic artifacts. Each one of these discoveries provided an important clue for how the plantation changed through time. First, archaeologists determined that the trenches were used for fire-curing tobacco. Next, they discovered that the teeth came from a later deposit, which contained dozens of parts of a wheat threshing machine. Finally, the domestic artifacts showed that this structure was used as some form of temporary housing for members of the enslaved community. Putting this all together, you can see how the plantation shifted from primarily a tobacco plantation to one that produced wheat as its major crop, and how these changes affected where the enslaved community lived. While agriculture was the core business of the plantation, other industries supported this work and provided additional streams of revenue. One of the most important of these was blacksmithing.
I am standing in the middle of what in the 1820s was the main blacksmith shop here at Montpelier. And this season for 2021, we're going to be opening units across this area that you see right behind me. In fact, where I'm standing, there's no flags whatsoever. I'm in the middle of the area that Dennis has been metal detecting for the past 6 months. And what you can see is this ring of flags that goes around this blank area. All those are the edge of the blacksmith site. And where I'm standing, the hits are so dense that basically Dennis was not able to differentiate between the metal detector hits with his machine. And when we sampled a few plugs, 6-inch plugs in this area, what we found was 30 to 40 metallic hits, like everything from a blacksmith cut iron scrap, slag, nail stock, horseshoes, horseshoe nails, all scattered across this area, which indicate this is the heart of the blacksmith shop.
The enslaved people who worked in the fields and industries of the home farm lived alongside these sites. While artifacts associated with their homes were first recovered in 1987, it wasn't until the 2000s that archaeologists were able to locate 2 small log cabin quarters. Alongside the cabins, several large borrow pits were discovered. These were holes dug by enslaved people to recover clay used for chinking between the logs of their cabin and to daub the wooden chimneys. These pits not only gave us a clue to what types of houses the enslaved community who worked in the home farm lived in, but what their lives were like. This is because the pits were full of trash from the enslaved community's daily life, including ceramics, food remains, tools, and other personal items. Members of the enslaved community were not the only ones who lived at the home farm. A free white overseer who was responsible for overseeing the work of enslaved laborers and maintaining constant surveillance over the community also lived there. This surveillance was a way of controlling the enslaved community in order to prevent escape, rebellion, or even the smallest acts of resistance. The Montpelier archaeology team has recently begun excavations to identify the location of the overseer's house. Using this 1844 map as a guide, archaeologists surveyed a rise that overlooks the blacksmith shop and enslaved quarters.
Hi, my name is Terry Brock. I'm the Assistant Director for Archaeology here at the Montpelier Foundation. We're out here at the overseer's site, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the larger landscape and where the overseer's site fits into the bigger context of the home farm. One of the really important things to know about the overseer's site is that it exists in this bigger context. The overseer is the person who would have been managing, in large part, a big part of this plantation while James Madison was up in Washington, D.C., and even while he was here at Montpelier. So the location of this home, when you look at it in its bigger context, you can start to see how it's associated with that role of overseeing. Right here is where we believe the structure itself was located based on the preliminary excavations that we've done so far. And as you look behind me, you can start to see the locations of the other parts of the home farm. Slave quarters, industrial sites like a blacksmith shop and a farrier site, agricultural buildings and barns, a great deal of pieces of the bigger plantation operation that the overseer was in charge of. Over here where you see all of the pin flags, that's the location of a blacksmith shop that we are in the process of surveying so that we can do some excavations on. Behind me you can see the 3 log cabin structures. Those are slave quarters that were identified and fully excavated previously as part of the field quarter excavations. Those are only a sample of what we believe to be a whole row of slave dwellings that the overseer would have been able to very clearly, as you can see, very clearly can be seen from this site. There's also a number of agricultural buildings. The tobacco barn quarter, which we identified and excavated, a structure that initially was used as a tobacco barn but was later converted into a wheat threshing barn, is located over here. And our metal detector surveys suggest that there are a number of other agricultural structures and barns in that same area. So again, from the location where you are looking through the camera, you are able to see from this spot, from the location of the house, the agricultural buildings, the homes of the enslaved African Americans who lived and worked here, and then also the industrial sites. This landscape, this broader landscape, is very much centered around the viewshed and the perspective of the overseer.
Today, the Montpelier Archaeology Department is embarking on a multi-year project to better understand the home farm as a whole. Through collaboration with the Montpelier Descendants Committee, we are developing new research questions, methodologies, and interpretations to tell the stories of the enslaved people of Montpelier. To learn more about the Home Farm Project and to stay up to date with our latest discoveries, please follow us on social media and visit www.digitaldoorway.montpelier.org and look for Home Farm under the Project tab.